to let you know. So, all right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victoria Berry, and I'm the director of the Family Focus Resource Center. Today we have a workshop for you about getting ready for life after high school. Our presenters are Scott Shepard and Jereth Suede. Scott Shepard is the co-owner of an agency that serves adults with developmental disabilities called Avenues SLS. He's also a faculty member at Cal State University Northridge and has been very involved in transition and adult age services and employment in our community. And with him is his co-presenter, Jereth Suede. Jereth is going to introduce himself during the presentation, but Jereth has done many presentations with Scott, and he's an adult who lives and works in the community. So we're really happy to have you both with us today. We would like this workshop to be fairly informal, so if any of you have any questions during the workshop, feel free to raise your hand, your Zoom hand, or put something in the chat or unmute yourself, and we can take some questions during the meeting, during the workshop. All right, so now I'd like to hand it off to Scott and Jereth.
All right, thanks, Victoria. And Jereth, you just want to introduce yourself real quick? I know you'll say more about yourself in the slides, but go ahead.
I'm Jereth, and I'm gonna share my story with you.
Yep. All right, so we want to make sure that first of all, that as family members especially, it's really important to have high expectations for your sons and daughters, and especially for your sons and daughters with disabilities as well, because that really influences the outcomes that your sons and daughters have as they grow into young adults and to older adults, and learning in helping them as well as yourselves as family members to advocate for those high expectations that you have is going to really influence the outcomes. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So I sort of put on my thinking cap, and like Victoria said, I've got gray hair, so I've been around a while, and came up with sort of what I think are five sort of key pathways to success that we wanted to touch on today. One is the importance of helping your sons and daughters to build social and communication skills. And the best way to do that is to ensure that they have opportunities while they're still in school to be educated with typical peers. That is just so critical. Teaching at Cal State Northridge, I do a lot of work with future teachers and do a lot of education of our future teachers. And what our research shows is that there are no benefits to educating people in segregated settings, in settings where they don't have an opportunity to be around typical peers. And that's what we've done for decades. But we know that there are tremendous benefits when students have an opportunity to have electives with other students without disabilities and to be fully included in classes with the supports they need. And that's where sometimes it helps when, as family members, we can advocate for that and sort of put our foot down and say, this is what we expect. Okay, but the best way for people to build social and communication skills is for people to actually be out in the community and in groups, in youth groups, and religious education activities, in park and rec activities, taking other classes, after-school programs, boys and girls clubs, scouts, things like that can be really critically important in helping people to build those social and communication skills. Also, Jereth will talk a little bit about this, the importance of work-based learning opportunities and building a career. And the best way to do that is to have opportunities even while the students are in school, for volunteerism and employment, as this will help with that resume development. And then we're going to talk also about the importance of self-advocacy, the idea that nothing about me without me is something that many folks with disabilities have shared with us. And regardless of the severity of the disability, people should be able to participate in IEP meetings and other meetings that are about them. I still go to IEP meetings today, and the first question I ask is, where's the student? And oftentimes the administration will say, oh, well, they wouldn't get anything out of this and they'd be too bored. And I say, well, if that's the case, why aren't we providing accommodations during the meeting? Why aren't we providing opportunities for, bring in pictures and slides like what Jereth is going to present? But why aren't we bringing pictures of the IEP goals so that the student can have some interest instead of just a bunch of papers with a bunch of words on them that they may not be interested in? But there are ways that we can promote students' participation, even if it's partially, okay? And then opportunities for each of our youth to be able to take on more responsibilities for themselves, including skill building at home and in the community, having the opportunity to be assigned to do chores like other siblings, and to be involved in budgeting as well. These things will really be helpful to them, as these skills will be helpful as they exit school. And the last thing, something that we've got a tremendous amount of research on, is the importance of community-based instruction and skill development in community settings. And again, we'll talk more about this. So again, how to improve that social and communication skill development. As I shared, we feel you should always push in your student's IEP for full school inclusion with typical peers. If for the team or whatever, if they don't understand how to do that within your school district, at a minimum, push to increase the general education electives if they're not fully included in mainstream courses. Try to avoid the pull-out therapies and request that these therapies like speech therapy and things like that be done in natural settings. If somebody is learning communication skills, we want them to help learn those skills to order their food in the cafeteria, to go to the library and check something out. We want it to be functional and not just something where they're pulled out from being with their typical peers. We want to make sure that people have opportunities to work with typical peers in cooperative learning groups and on the playground and turn taking with general ed peers, etc. And then ensure that speech generating devices for those that may have that sort of assistive technology, make sure they use a voice that's of the same gender and even hopefully the same age as the user. It's really odd when somebody's using a voice output device and it's an adult and an adult of a different gender. It won't promote a lot of that sort of conversation and interaction with typical peers. They'll say, well, that's odd. And even if you can enlist a peer that wouldn't mind even recording their voice for some of the output, some of the peers are really excited to do that. And then assist students to enroll, again, like I said, in clubs and groups, both on campus that are related to their interests, with the support and accommodations they need to promote successful inclusion. So getting back to the importance of parent expectations. Eric Carter, a colleague of mine, has done a tremendous amount of research on elevating parent expectations and how that leads to positive outcomes. So national data from over 11,000 youth in all special education categories looked at predictors for post-school employment outcomes of young adults with significant disabilities. And the findings showed that young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities whose parents expected them to obtain post-school work in high school were more than 5 times as likely to have paid community employment within 2 years after exiting. So parent expectations can definitely drive the system. And we can't emphasize enough how important it is to have integrated work-based experiences in school as part of the individual transition plan or IEP transition plan. So we encourage you to advocate for work-based learning experiences in your IEP and then later in your IPP with the regional center, that individualized program plan. And volunteerism and developing a resume of experience will also help to lead to successful employment career outcomes. And volunteering is a pathway to employment, and kids can start volunteering even as young teens. A lot of times there's a lot of high school requirements that ask the students to do a certain amount of hours of service learning, sort of volunteer in the community. And you can do that through, if you have a church or a temple or something that you attend, you can do some of that work there. You can do some of it sometimes at a Red Cross or at a food bank or at the senior center, things like that. And the good news about volunteerism is that when you volunteer, they have a 27% higher likelihood of finding a job after being out of work than non-volunteers. And even volunteers without a high school diploma have a 51% higher likelihood of finding employment than non-volunteers. And volunteers living in rural areas have a 55% higher likelihood of finding employment than non-volunteers. And it's also a great thing to have on your resume. So, Vicki, anything in chat we need to address before I turn it over to Jereth?
No questions at this time. Someone asked if we can send out the slides afterwards, and yes, we send out the slides probably tomorrow, and the workshop will be posted on our YouTube channel by sometime next week.
Great, thanks. All right, I'm going to turn the next part over to Jereth.
Hi, I'm Jereth. Taking control of my life wasn't easy, but working sure did help. When I first moved into my own place in 2008, I didn't really care about making decisions in my life. I had meltdowns when things didn't go my way. After high school, I went through career transition services, but didn't like going to their disability classes. So I took a few classes at College of the Canyons on my own, volunteered with the CLC football team. I started telling my doctor that I felt too sleepy during the day, felt over medicated, which made me sleepy and overweight.
And so getting back, so when you went to high school, you were on a general ed campus.
Yeah.
And you took classes with everybody else, right? Typical kids, and you had some like a special ed homeroom, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was different because when you went to that transition, you didn't want to go anymore because you didn't get to hang out with your high school friends anymore. It was get special ed only, right?
Yeah.
And did you like that?
No.
Okay. So that's one of the reasons why you started taking some classes on your own at College of the Canyons, because that's where your other friends were from high school.
Yeah. I got off some meds that made me sleepy and tired. Now I'm awake enough to make a difference in my life and try to deal with tough situations that come up. I felt too sleepy in IEP meetings and doctor's visits. I thought I had no reason to stay awake. I learned to express myself at meetings instead of sleeping through them.
Oh yeah, and there's a recent picture, huh?
Yep. That's me and Caitlin Clark.
Wow, even I know who Caitlin Clark is.
Oh yeah, yeah. She put women's basketball on the
Very
map.
famous.
Yeah.
This is the old daily checklist I used to do. It helped me get through, make sure I had stuff that I needed to do in the morning and at night.
And when you first moved out from your mom's place into your own place with a roommate, because you and your roommate have, goodness, you split rent and utilities back since what, 2008 when you moved out, right? You and Max?
Yep.
And so do you use this checklist anymore?
No.
No, it was just something that sort of helped him as an accommodation to sort of keep on track. Remind him that it's helpful to look at your checklist the night before. That way you won't forget to plug in your phone, and the next day have a phone that's not charged and you're ready to go out for your day and get frustrated about it. So having a checklist helped, but now you get to do those things on your own.
Yeah.
But it was a bridge until he learned to be more independent in these areas, I think, right?
Yeah. Now ask me who plans my day, my week, and my life. I do.
Okay, and what's that picture on the left?
That's me with my boss and Mayor Gibson.
Mayor Gibbs.
Gibbs.
All right. And you guys are receiving an award for your current job where?
At Kohl's.
Okay, and you'll talk a little bit more about that.
It was hard at first, but now I budget my money for my paychecks to help me pay my cell phone bill, cable. I pay my own since I wanted the sports channels. I split the rent and utilities and internet with my roommates. Getting a paycheck helps. After 4 years working at Six Flags, I worked at Target for 5 years. I had a second job at the movie theater for over a year, but didn't like closing late at night and sweating outside in the heat on hot days. When I started working at Target, they asked me if I wanted to learn the register. I said yes, even though I thought my staff said it might be too hard, but I proved them wrong.
So one of the things that I think is unique in learning to we want to really individualize, and you'll hear a lot through your IPP and IEP about the importance of person-centered supports. And we really believe strongly in that too, that everybody is unique individual, and everybody's IPP or IPP should really look different, and because it needs to be unique and individualized to the person. So one of the things that Jereth, that you taught us, was that when we first met Jereth, he was affiliated with some work supported employment programs with Department of Rehab. And did those work out?
No.
No. In fact, Department of Rehab said, we're done. He can't work with us. And why did they say that?
Because they thought I was not ready to work.
Right. And one of the things that they had, they didn't really do a person-centered model in that at that time anyhow, because what did they say you had to have with you on the job?
A job coach.
And do you want to have a job coach with you?
No.
How come?
Because they boss me around too much.
Are they your boss?
No.
Who's your boss?
My boss is.
Yeah, your real boss is your boss, right?
Yeah.
And so there were some issues where he didn't take kindly to some coach from an agency telling him what to do in front of his coworkers and hovering around you, right? And making him feel different. He didn't want that. And so we really listened to that and said, okay, you still need some support around work, but we're going to do that. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to provide all that coaching before you go in. And we get him to work every morning, but we talk and we problem solve. If you have an issue that you want to bring up to your supervisor,
Yep.
then you ask one of us to go in with you, and we go in and meet with you and help work those things out. And sometimes if there's a training day, you used to ask for a coach to come in if they had some work on the computer to help you with. But I think you did the last one actually by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, I think you're getting more confident and competent, doing those kind of things.
Yeah.
And again, we listened to him not having a coach. So this day that Jereth had probably been at Target for just a couple months, I think.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a job coach with him. And so they said, hey, Jereth, gosh, we're really busy in the front. Do you want to learn how to do the checkout stand? And you said,
yes.
You said, yeah. Now, from my perspective as a professional, Jereth has a money manager through the regional center, because he needs some support with finances and budgeting and money and things like that. And I might have actually said, oh, I don't know if that's a great idea. So thank goodness I'm not there. So when Jereth called me at night and said, hey, I worked a check stand today. And I'm going, oh, uh-oh. And I said, oh, well, what'll happen, or what would you do if you had a customer complain or argue that you charged them the wrong amount? What would you do?
Call my supervisor.
Like, oh, okay, well, that's the right answer. And I asked a few more questions. He had all the answers. And I said, well, thank goodness I wasn't there, because I might have been a barrier to him being able to work on the register. Thank goodness I wasn't there. So Jereth has exceeded even my expectations in that. So I think that was really exciting.
It is. Hey, Scott, I want to just break in quickly with a question that came up in the chat. Someone asks, is supported living service the same as integrated employment?
No. So we didn't give you an outline of supported living services. So we started back in a pilot program when supported living services first started back in 1993 through North LA County Regional Center. And what supported living services provide is an alternative to more separated or segregated, like group home living. It's everybody lives in their own place. So we don't own any buildings or any homes or anything like that. Everybody either rents, or we have one person that actually has jointly purchased a home as he works and has some work income to be able to do that, which is exciting. Jereth rents along with his longtime roommate. Your roommate doesn't have a disability.
No.
So none of the people that we support actually lives with another person with disability. That might happen at some point, again, if somebody has a relationship with somebody and that works out. But right now, people that have a roommate, they just split the rent and utilities, and that roommate without a disability may provide some of that support. But we provide whatever supports people need to be safe and productive in their own place. And then we also help out with community things, with shopping, with how do you get involved in your community? How do you get around the community? Things like that as well. And in Jereth's case, since he really didn't want a traditional day program either, right? He didn't want to go somewhere from 9 to 3 every day.
Mm-hmm.
So we just support Jereth through supported living services, and that might include employment, because that's really important to you. And getting a paycheck, as you'll find out in a couple more slides. But over 2/3 of the people we support need 24/7 support. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to be safe in their own place. But they receive that support. And we have funding through the regional center, but we also have to apply for the generic resource of in-home support services, IHSS, which many of you are probably familiar with. But that's a service that those hours are also part of that blended funding that can be provided to the people that need the 24-hour support can have that. Or even people that might just need IHSS for a few things, but we have some people that don't need that 24-hour care as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But
my newest job at Kohl's, working there for 2.5.
Yeah, almost 3. It'll be 3 in October, right?
Yeah.
And what do you do at Kohl's?
I do the Amazon returns.
All right.
A couple months ago, I earned Employee of the Month. My paycheck helps me support my hobbies.
And one of your hobbies is?
Building Legos and collecting Star Wars Legos.
Star Wars Lego sets.
Yeah.
And those can be expensive, right, Jereth?
Yeah.
Do you get a discount working at Kohl's?
Yeah.
Well, that must come in handy.
Yeah. And yes, I'm a big UCLA football fan and basketball fan. And yes, I do still do my chores.
Yeah, even though you're a big employee and doing all this other stuff, you still got it. Nobody's going to do your chores for you, right?
Yeah. I love going to Disneyland and theme parks and Legoland with my paychecks. I used to think that nobody listened to help me get what I wanted. I don't threaten to fire my team anymore. I trust them now. My job coaches support me by
Transitioning.
transitioning me to work in the mornings and drive me to work. I use Access and Dial Ride or Lyft to get me home after work. I coordinate all my transportation rides with my work schedule, my sports schedule, and doctor's appointments, and my staff schedule in my life. I also want to tell you what I look forward to do outside my work hours. Love going to Planet Fitness, love going to UCLA and high school football games, buying more Lego sets, planning more vacations, going to sports events, and even I became a homeowner. Let me tell you about it. My new timeshare on the beach near Legoland. Working gets me good things in life.
Yeah, it sure does.
That's amazing. I love that timeshare picture.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, he had to put in for a lottery system to be able to get that. He went with someone else, right?
Yeah.
And he loved the area. He loves Legoland. It's Carlsbad, right on the beach, just down the street from Legoland. And there's other things to do down there as well.
Yeah.
And you plan a long vacation every year there, and then also some shorter ones when you can get them.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Jereth? You'll share a little bit about budgeting in a little bit too.
Okay.
I don't see any questions for Jereth right now.
All right. Keep plugging along. So since Jereth had an opportunity to share a little bit about the importance of employment, because employment is, if people don't have a job, at least part-time, to earn some extra income, they're generally going to be living in poverty if they're only going to be receiving or relying on their supplemental security income, that SSI, or even perhaps a SSDI, which might come from benefits from parents who have retired or that may have passed away. But if all they're relying is sort of those Social Security benefits, then it's going to be really difficult for people to sort of have the lives they want, like Jereth does.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot more helpful when people have at least some income. And there's a lot of good incentives right now that are available to young adults and older adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the state. And we want to make sure that you're all aware of them. So employment supports and services that can be used to obtain either competitive integrated employment or a paid internship can include all the following. So that question that came up earlier, I think, was actually, related a little bit to this. It used to be that there's different types of programs you could get referred to in the regional center, and supported employment through Department of Rehab was often one of the main ways, or maybe the only way sometimes, that people thought about how to get people a paid job. But we're now looking at educating the vendors and the community and families that there's a lot of different options where people can get at least some part-time work started. So the big focus right now is employment that's called CIE, or competitive integrated employment. And what that means is a person gets paid directly by the employer. So getting a paycheck through them, they're not paid under the table. They're paid with payroll taxes and all that. And then it's integrated. It's in a typical setting. It's not in like a sheltered workshop or another segregated type setting. It's actually in the community where you're working alongside typical peers. Okay. And again, employment that you're paid directly by that job. There's also now opportunities for paid internships, very similar to the workability program that's available in the school system. But a paid internship provides an opportunity for individuals to be employed, where the employer actually gets reimbursed for the wages while the person's sort of training or interning, and to see if it's a good match. The hope is that over a period of time, as the person's skills improve and as the person realizes, okay, this is the job I want to keep doing, and the employer says, yeah, I want to make a commitment now, that they'll eventually hire that person on and take on that full responsibility. The person may still need a job coach. That's okay. All right. Or maybe they won't have one, depending on what their skill level is. But a paid internship will allow somebody to try out a job or more than one job to find out if it's a good match for them. And we find it usually takes at least 3 different job opportunities for people to figure out a job that's a good match for them. Even if we do a lot of research and we try to do a lot of assessment to figure out what's a great match, the first couple, it might work out for a while, but then the person maybe wants something a little bit different. They let us know either by telling us or through their behavior or affect that this isn't a good match, and we try something else. But usually it 3 times, 3 different job placements, until people can sort of figure out what's a good sort of career path for them. So the options that you'll typically be able to get through the regional center include traditional supported employment services, which requires you to open up a case or to apply with Department of Rehabilitation for VOC rehab services. And you can usually do this while you're still in school. They usually want you to wait until the end of your school services, so maybe the last year, but you can certainly apply while you're still in school. But also you can get job opportunities while you're still in high school. You can get them through, by having a coach through your classroom, especially between 18 and 22. If you're continuing your school services for transition during that time, we really encourage you to ask for an IEP goal that includes some sort of work-based training. It could be on campus or off campus, but something that gives an opportunity for people to try things and ideally even to get a paycheck and to see what that's like. Once the person exits school, the regional center also has community integration programs, which are the day programs, but they're all community-based, and they can assist people to get jobs like we do. Supported living services. We can also, like with Jereth, since he doesn't have a day program, we just provide those supports that he needs through SLS, or supported living services. Also, independent living skills can help out with some of that job instruction and prep. Even a residential provider like a residential home, a group home, can assist somebody to get a job, and they're eligible for incentives once they help get people jobs. So any regional center vendor service provider can assist people with getting a job, and it doesn't have to be a specialized service. And I know that our State Council on Developmental Disability is really working to make this more of a reality throughout the state right now. So we're really excited. But one thing that's really important is that for someone to have competitive integrated employment or a paid internship, the person must have an IPP goal, a goal in their regional center IPP for employment. And even if you're not sure of, what type of job, or if something will come up, or you're not sure your son or daughter might be ready yet, it's good to have a goal, because if something does come up, then you already have the goal that we are exploring employment options. That's all. That's all you got to put. But that way you're ready, set, go. If something comes up and somebody, a friend or a contact says, hey, we have an opportunity here, and you say, wow, that would be a great thing for this person to try. Boom, you've already got it in the IPP. And we also want to share a couple of tools that you can use now with your sons or daughter, regardless of their age, to help promote success. One is something that some of you may already be using. It's called a one-page support guide. Some people also call them one-page profiles. And we have a version of that Victoria has in a Word document, so you can actually fill that out. We recommend that you work with the team, the family, and the individual to get all the information on there, so that it's just all that information, just a snapshot of who that person is on one page. And this is an excellent tool to be able to use for that person can use to train new staff, whether it's a respite provider, whether it's behavioral in-home behavior support, or an ILS, an independent living skills instructor that comes over to provide some supports. They will have a one-page snapshot of who that person is that will really help them get up to speed on what works and what doesn't work when supporting the individual. While they're still in school, it's a great tool to use to transition on to new teachers or instructional assistants in the classroom, or even peers. Okay, it's a great tool to be able to use. And when people actually get a job, it's good to share this with coworkers and supervisor as well to help give them some information. And then a second one that we're going to go through is an individual job assessment form. So if you are looking at employment for your son or daughter, or if they're looking for employment either now or down the road, it's a real simple, practical tool that if you answer these questions, that will really help provide some critical information to the agency that ends up, that you end up choosing to support your son or daughter. So the one-page support guide, the blank form sort of looks like this. And again, so for example, if it was me, it would be Scott's one-page support guide. Maybe include a picture, not one that's on the DMV, but something that looks good. And then the next section is, what do people appreciate about me? And the person may answer a lot of these themselves. If the person doesn't communicate traditionally or isn't sure, then ask some of their peers, brothers, sisters, family members, team members, what are some good things about this person? Okay, but again, it's the good stuff, right? The things that you want to share. Like, just like a resume, you don't put bad things on your resume, you only put the good stuff. That's the same thing with this one. And then the next section, what is important to me? So from that person's perspective, what's important to me? So what's important to you, Jereth? Legos, and having a Lego set to work on. And I think I think Jereth, for you even, so Jereth gets the Legos and he painstakingly puts them all together. I don't have that kind of patience, but he does. And I think it's also a stress reliever.
Yeah.
I think it gives you a good project to sort of work on in your free time. And if other things are bothering you in other areas of your life, you need some me time with a Lego set, And so Legos would definitely be on Jereth's list. Okay. Yeah, I like to, see a good movie every now and then. So that might be what's important to me. For other people, it might be different people. It might be a certain a pet they have, or certain activities they enjoy. And then after that is what is important for me. That's a little bit different than what's important to me, because what's important for me might be Jereth and I, okay, we need to go to the gym to make sure we can work off some of the nice food that we eat. So what's important for me might be I got to go to the gym regularly. Like Jereth shared that he's got a membership at Planet Fitness. Is that it? So, that might be something that's important for me. Okay, what's important for me? To, budget my money so I have enough to buy a Lego set.
Yep.
Things like that. Okay. Other things might be health issues, things like that. We support some people that maybe have diabetes. So, sort of watching their carb intake and things like that are things that might be important as well for some people. It just all depends on the person. And then down at the bottom, what works and what doesn't work when supporting me. And this is really helpful, especially when you have, when you want to use this to train or introduce the person to new staff or respite providers or a job coach, or even at work. It's good for coworkers to know, what works. It doesn't work when you repeat things over and over. It just makes me frustrated. Okay. It doesn't work when, when you tell me what to do. If you make it a request. With some people, what works is using some visuals. Write things down for me. Show me a picture or demonstrate it. Show me what to do instead of tell me and wah, 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 where I just don't process that information. Okay. And other things that are helpful that you know already work and don't work when supporting the person. Okay. And then the last section is, how does the person learn and process information best? Again, I'm more of a visual motor learner, and very similar to a lot of people I support that are on the autism spectrum. I learn better by seeing and doing. If somebody just lectures me, I just tune it out. I just can't process all that. My wife is a very auditory learner, so she's great at all the auditory stuff. But I'm more visual motor. I learn by seeing and doing. And it's different for each person. But it's really helpful to say when we're giving instruction to this person, or when we are helping them to learn something, whether it's a new job or whether it's a math problem or whether it's a home chore or a home skill, what's the best way we should present that information in a way that they're going to understand it? And again, if we can put it all on one page, what we've learned is that if we put a document together that's 5 or 10 pages about the important things to know about your son or daughter, we find out that the teachers just don't take the time to read it. If it's on one page, we've got a better chance that somebody's actually going to read it and sort of understand it. And then every year you should sort of add things to it or update it, because sometimes some of that information changes. So again, you should have that as just a resource from this little webinar here. But again, one-page support guide. The next one is called an individual job assessment, and it's something that we've modified over the years that I've done since 1988. So it shows you how long I've been around. I developed this because we had a lot of folks that were coming out of state hospital settings that were either younger or even older adults that had been in these state hospitals, these state institutions since they were kids. Many of them had no communication skills at all, no verbal skills, but we felt they were capable of doing some meaningful things. And we were right, because these people are doing meaningful things. They continue to do meaningful things. But since they couldn't tell us what they wanted to do, and since they didn't have any experiences, many didn't have any experiences of being in the community since they were little kids. So we had to either interview people that knew them, or based on our observations with them in community settings, we had to find out what worked and what didn't work. So these are the simple things that are on here. Again, if the person's able to be interviewed, great, but many times the person might not be able to give us a lot of information, him or herself. So we may need to interview the family or other teachers or people that have known that person for a while. Okay. And then again, sort of the simple questions we ask are, does this person seem to perform better in the indoors or outdoors? Do they do better around lots of people or not too many? Standing or sitting? Would they prefer a job or an activity where they get to move around, or where they stay in one place? Do they prefer a loud environment or a quiet environment? Do they prefer being very active, in a busy environment, or in a not too busy environment? And do they prefer physical activity on the job or more non-physical duties? And then we also look at what are the hours of the day people might prefer to actually work or to do something. Are they more of a morning person? Are they more active in the middle of the day? Or would they rather do evenings or even a late shift? Okay. And are you a real early morning person?
No,
No, me neither. So
but now I am, because I have to work in the daytime.
yeah, well, you start at 9, which is good, but 7 a.m.
No,
Yeah, you had a couple of those at the movie theater, and that was a little challenging.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's important to sort of look at that as a starting point, at least. Before people go to an interview, it's important to know, are they willing to work weekends? Because they are probably going to be asked that question if they're working for a business that's open on weekends. And then we look at what are the fine motor abilities, what can the person do with their fingers or their hands? Gross motor, can people push, carry, move things? Is that something they can do at all? What's their expressive communication ability? And do they have any communication adaptations that they use? Any assistive technology? Do they use sign language or a tablet, a voice output device? Do they need an interpreter? Things like that. And again, this is a Word document, so you can actually type onto it, okay? What's the person's receptive language ability? Again, how do they best receive and understand information? How does the person learn best? Do they learn best by hearing, by what they see, by movement or kinesthetic motor? Do they learn by routine? Or it could be a combination of those. Describe any self-care, hygiene, or toileting support needs the person may have in the community or on a community-based job. Okay, that shouldn't rule out, getting a job if a person has some needs in those areas, but it's important to know what those needs are so that they can be accommodated. Are there any behavioral or communication concerns in the community around the public? And then we found it's important to differentiate behaviors that happen like in a special day class from in the community. Because I know a lot of students that have a lot of behaviors when they're around other people with behaviors. But when we get people out in more individualized settings in the community, we see that a lot of those behaviors don't happen nearly as much when people are out in environments that are matched to sort of what they enjoy. And so that's what we try to accomplish through this sort of, an assessment tool looking at the environment. Does the person have any vocational related skills? But we also ask, what are their hobbies and job interests that they might have? What supports will they need to be successful? Some people may need a job coach the entire time that they're working. We have a woman that we support that I've known, my goodness, for a long time, since her family moved out here with her right when she exited school. She happens to be on the spectrum. She doesn't have good expressive communication. She can say a word or two here or there. She has a history of being in behavior management programs because of some challenges that she's displayed over the years. But what we found is that when we got her out of those behavior programs and into the community, we found she did much better. And she had a lot of community-based instruction that she naturally did with her dad. She would go everywhere with her dad. He'd go shopping, he'd do this, he'd do that, and she just went with him everywhere. And she loved it. And she loved to be busy. And we started getting her jobs. And Heather has now worked at the movie theater for over 25 years and has worked at Marshall's as a second job for over 20 years. Now, each of these jobs, she works just a couple hours a day, a few days a week, and she has a job coach with her the entire time she's there. But that's okay. And she does well, and it helps to supplement her income so that she can have a better quality of life because she's got a little more spending power now. Okay. So again, that's another tool that we wanted to make sure that you all had access to, that we've found to be really helpful just as looking forward in the future for folks. A couple other things, and then I'm going to have Jereth have you talk a little bit about budgeting before we finish, okay?
Okay.
So some other generic resources that you should be able to access while people are still in school. And Vicki, I think we got a question from Catherine.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, this is actually what I have a question about. I can let you read the list. So I'm wondering what kinds of tips do you have for parents who are applying, either applying for these for the first time, for instance, CalFresh or SSI, for their children who have recently become adults and they're still living with them. So how do you frame, or how do you establish a young adult, a new adult, as their own household?
So with CalFresh is interesting. So CalFresh, if the person's still living at home at age 18, which almost everybody is, with or without disabilities, because it's very challenging, obviously, for housing right now. But so CalFresh, if the family qualifies, the entire family, for example, has Medi-Cal, things like that, having the now adult, can also be included, that will increase the rate the family gets. But if you have someone and the family doesn't qualify, but the 18-year-old would, if they're still included on their family's taxes, they're not eligible for the CalFresh until they turn 26. Okay, so that's just something to know about CalFresh. Now, on the other hand, we want to make sure that they get that California ID by the age of 18, because you're required to have that if you get any type of job. You have to show 2 forms of ID, usually Social Security card and California ID. So you want to definitely apply for that. Since you're applying for that, you might as well go for the real ID, because at some point in the future, you're going to need that to get on an airplane, a cruise ship, or if you're lucky enough to do any of that stuff. We also encourage families to assist their adult sons and daughters once they turn 18 to apply for SSI and Medi-Cal as their own separate adult, like Catherine just talked about. Okay. And it gets a little embarrassing. Some of the families say, no, it's okay. I don't want to have to worry about that. They're still living with us. Well, it's good to get them set up to be able to do that now for a variety of reasons. One reason is that once they're on SSI, which Medi-Cal will accompany that, they'll be eligible for that as well. Once they're on SSI, then they have access to the employment work incentives. So if they were to get a job earning $65 a month or more, and that's only a few hours now when people are making, $18 an hour plus. So, once they start making that kind of money, if they've already got the SSI, then the work incentives will kick in, allowing them to earn more. But if they don't have SSI and then they get a job, even if they're only working like 10 hours a week, that may put them over the threshold, so they won't be able to apply once they started working. Does that make sense? Okay, because if their work earnings are so much, and if they have assets in the bank, then SSI, that they'll be turned down for SSI. So we encourage them to get it by age 18. Once they get SSI, we encourage families they should have a separate account for that. They can assist the person to monitor that money. They should pay a portion for the rent. They should pay a portion for the utilities. And something else that's really helpful is we want people to start building their own credit history. And that means that we have to find some way to put them on as a bill payer. One of the easiest ways that we've worked with families is, almost every household has an internet provider. And so we would encourage that. The internet is probably an easy one. Let's see unless it's in a bundle pack, but still, let's see if we can get your 18-year-old's name as the payer of that internet. And that will help them to build up that credit history. Because so often we've got young adults that are in their late 20s and 30s. They've never had any utilities or anything in their name. They don't have any credit history. And when you're trying to move into a place now, they want a long, lengthy credit history. And most of our folks don't have it. And that will require a deposit that they probably don't have. So we really encourage, get them to have some sort of a credit history, even if they got a cell phone in their name. Even though we usually have a family plan. Is there something that they can, with that SSI, take on and some bill that they can put in their name to build that credit history is going to be really helpful. We also encourage folks to apply for transit services to get a transit card, a disabled TAP card, or access door-to-door transportation, which Jereth has been eligible for. And in Santa Clarita, I think it's still called Dial-A-Ride, but it's operated through the Access Services. Yeah. Is it Dial-A-Ride or Access? What do they call them now?
It's both.
They call it both. Okay, because Santa Clarita sort of has its own system, the door-to-door transit system as needed. Make sure that people apply for that public library card. It's free, and there's a lot of online services. There's a lot, you can download music, record other things, get books on tape. There's a lot of wonderful services available through our local public libraries. And if you're in Santa Clarita or even San Fernando Valley, either one, we've got City of LA Public Library, we've got County of LA Public Library, we've got Santa Clarita Public Library. Apply for them all, okay? Because there's a lot of services people can get and access with their library cards, including use of computer terminals in the libraries that they can reserve. Cell phone, we encourage people to apply for either the California Universal Lifeline or to get what they call the Obama phone, which is sort of a basic phone that they can be able to access then for free or at a huge discount. So, so look at that California Lifeline. We encourage people to learn the skills on how to use an ATM card. If you're worried about, oh, they're going to use up all the money with the ATM card, things like that, then what you can do is Jereth's going to tell you one option that he uses in a few minutes, but also just get a gift card and just reload the gift card or have people learn how to use gift cards. I went to an IEP 3 weeks ago, and oh my gosh, I almost had a heart attack because they're trying to teach a 20-year-old young man, happen to have Down syndrome. They're teaching him how to count change. And I just said, that's not a functional skill anymore. Nobody counts their change. You either put it in the little thing in front of you at the grocery store for the donations, but nobody counts their change, okay? And people rarely use cash anymore either, okay? So if anything, teach them how to use the bills, but not count change, and teach them how to use a swipe card, okay? Like a gift card or something like that. And that they can use that for an order at a fast food restaurant or a grocery store or a Walmart. Those are skills that people are going to need. Okay, so make sure it's functional. Starting at a young age, help give your kids an allowance. Once people get onto SSI at age 18, they should have a portion of that money, and they learn you get so much per week or whatever, and yeah, you can spend it. Spend it wisely or not wisely, but hey, just like us, get an opportunity to spend some of that, okay? Jereth, you're going to talk about Bluebird card, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then apply for that IHSS, the in-home support services. And sometimes families are eligible so people can have access to IHSS at a younger age, but by age 18, you can apply regardless of whether you're living with your family or not and get some hours. Oftentimes when a person's living with their family member, another family member may actually be the provider of those services. But you can also hire someone to come in and provide some in-home support services as needed based on what the person qualifies for. And if you haven't already, if you have an intellectual or developmental disability of some type, apply for regional center services and get that regional center service coordinator involved. Encourage them to come out, especially for those later IEPs during those transition years, because you want to know what's available when the school-funded services end so that the person doesn't experience a gap in services. And apply for Department of Rehab Services as appropriate to open a case while they're still in school. Okay, door to door. Housing vouchers, I'm going through our list. We've had a tremendous challenge in City of LA and LA County in general, accessing housing vouchers for people that we support. It's almost impossible. If people have one, they're like gold. But if they don't have one, very difficult to get. I support someone who came out of a state institution in 2008. We still have not been able to access any type of housing voucher for him. Sometimes if you get on a waiting list, there are places, for example, in Santa Clarita and other building units that have a certain percentage of units that are offered to seniors and people with disabilities for sort of a locked-in lower rate. And if you can at least get on the waiting list for those, even if you move into one, get on the waiting list and make sure your name continues to be on there. Your name may be drawn 5 years or more down the line, but when it is, it's really, really helpful. Utility discounts are also available for gas and electric if it's in the person with the disability's name. They can get a percentage off. So that's another incentive perhaps why you might have your adult son or daughter take on one of those utility bills. Repairs and accessible accommodations for low-income folks who may be either elderly or have disabilities are also available. Putting up grab bars, things like that, those kind of accommodations, and check with your local senior center for that. We also have food banks available. So even when people do get CalFresh, we also make use of local food banks. And we have many in San Fernando and Santa Clarita Valley area that are available to folks. So some are every week, some are every couple weeks, and there's different requirements for each one. But nobody has experienced any shortage of food, whether it's during the pandemic, after the pandemic, because we've been able to make use of a lot of these community resources. We also have had a situation or two where we have an individual that hasn't needed to have a stove in their apartment or in their studio apartment or one-bedroom apartment. In fact, if they had a stove, we thought it would do more damage than not. They were fine with microwaving and heating up meals, or having meals brought in. And we were able to disconnect that stove and have the apartment complex say, yes, he does not have a stove that's working in his apartment. And that gives you about an extra $120 a month in SSI. So that's something that's available for people if they don't need that stove and can do just fine with a hot plate, a microwave, things like that. Okay, it's just a little trick that we've looked at that might help people have a little extra income to afford if they've got to purchase more money to have meals brought in, or some people might need Meals on Wheels brought in with a special diet for diabetes or something else, and that costs. So having that little extra income might be helpful. And again, we talked about building credit. Okay, and promote. I talked about this before already, the importance of having all students participate, even partially, in those IEP meetings. In IPP meetings, I generally see everybody is able to participate to some extent. I know that a goal that I have when I go in with younger students, teenagers, and as they're getting older, is to say that they should be taking on more of a role at their meetings over time, whether it's helping to invite people, whether it's helping to follow the agenda, whether it's sharing their stories through a slideshow like Jereth is doing, or even if they're just able to point to things that are going on. But to have pictures shared of the IEP or IPP goals is a very helpful way to get people more involved in participating in their meetings. And again, if it's going to be one of those 2-hour meetings, maybe you say, great, we're going to have them participate for the first 20 to 30 minutes. And then we're going to say, you can leave while the family and the legal advocate and all these professionals hash things out. That's fine, but they at least need to make an appearance to remind everybody who is this meeting about. Okay, and we talked about chores are important too. Teach your kids at home how to prepare a meal, heat up leftovers, whatever it is. But yeah, can they at least pour themselves some cereal for breakfast or put in some toast or something like that? Giving them those skills, it's not helpful to shelter them from the responsibilities that other siblings have, okay? All right, and Jereth, we're gonna just finish a little bit on some of these here. So Social Security is a little bit of a pain, right?
Yeah. What are my responsibilities as a worker? Well, I have to turn in my pay stubs to Social Security.
Now, how do you do that? Because nowadays, you don't often get a real pay stub in the mail or anything, right? It's
all online.
It's almost all online. So what do?
You have to print them out.
Print them out, and then what do?
Turn them into Social Security.
You have to wait in line, or?
If there's not a person at Social Security, then you just go to the drop-off box and drop it off. If you don't know what the drop-off box is at Social Security, you could ask the security guard and her tell you where the drop-off box is.
Excellent. So that is really important, okay, to be able to drop off those pay stubs. We recommend strongly that you drop off your pay stubs every month.
Or
Oh.
they'll cut your social security. They won't give you a full amount, they'll give you less.
Right, they'll get you may get an overpayment letter saying we paid you too much, so we're cutting back. And those fun letters to get?
No.
Okay, so what we found at Social Security, they're pretty busy, and the population that we deal with have lifelong disabilities. And sometimes Social Security maybe has one person in their office that really understands our population. The majority of people that they work with have temporary disabilities. And so they see people getting on and off SSI and as they need it. And in fact, one of the challenges we had a little bit, Jereth's now been working fairly regularly for 15 years or more, right?
Yeah.
And, at some point, they say, now he's on SSDI through his mom. That's the Social Security Disability Insurance that he gets, that he collects. And they say, he's been making this much for a long time. So he obviously, according to Social Security definition, if he makes that much money over a certain amount of years, then he must no longer have a disability. And so we had to say, well, yes, Jereth makes that much, but Jereth, his support needs due to his disability haven't gone away. And we've been able to show that he does have a subsidy. He does get coaching related to work, both before work and getting to work and getting prepared for work. And we were able to show that. And it was a long sort of drawn out thing. It took them about a year, but they said, okay, you're right. And so his benefits are continuing. But we have to do a little bit of that work behind the scenes sometimes with Social Security to make sure that they understand that the people we're supporting have permanent disabilities and long-term support needs. And we're excited when somebody maybe doesn't need access to those benefits, but in Jereth's case, he continues to need those benefits in addition to the work earnings, and just have those Social Security work incentives kick in and continue to work for him. One of the things that's helpful is a money manager, and I guess you got a money manager?
Yes.
And what does that person do? And why did you have one? Why did they set that up a long time ago?
Because people could take advantage of you.
All right. Well, you were too nice with your money sometimes, right?
Yeah.
You had some friends that would always ask you for money, so that wasn't good. And then tell them the story. What used to happen when you got paid every week at 12:01 on Friday morning. At 12:01 a.m. you got your paycheck online. What happened to that paycheck?
It was gone at 12:01.
It was gone at 12:01 because Jereth did his online buying and spent that whole check within 2 minutes. So if your mom wanted you to buy some new underwear, you said, "You out of luck, Mom. I got the good stuff," right?
What were you buying, Jereth? Were you buying Lego sets?
No, I was buying I think Lego sets and other stuff.
Yeah.
And football
Yeah.
games, all kinds.
Tickets to football games.
Yeah.
I see.
So you've got a money manager, and the money manager you can request through the regional center, and that person will then help to make sure that the person pays for all of their bills first, and then whatever's money left over can go back to the person to spend on those other things. So the money manager, though, only has access to Jereth's SSDI, the money he gets from Social Security. So all the work money comes in separately, and Jereth's got to budget that, but he's going to share what he does with that in a minute, or how you do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But just a quick overview. Our wage reporting responsibilities are to report any work earnings over $65 a month. And again, that's, if anybody's got a job working a couple hours a week, they're going to probably hit that. It's important to know that income is counted for the month based on the pay date. So for example, if Jereth worked in May through today, but he doesn't get paid till next week, it'll be countable as June income. So the income is counted based on the pay date, the date on the paycheck. Okay. The Social Security Administration will not encourage you to report monthly. They don't appreciate it because it's too much paperwork for them. They just want to plug in an amount into their computer and not deal with it for a year. But the problem is, Jereth, do you work the same schedule every week?
Pretty much.
Okay, but do you always work the same days and same hours?
No.
No. Okay.
It changes.
It changes. And for example, you worked last Monday. What's different about last Monday?
It was a holiday.
So what do you get paid?
Time and a half.
Yeah, so you got extra money on Monday since he worked the holiday. So his work earnings fluctuate. They go up and down based on the days he works. Sometimes there's 5 weeks in a month. Sometimes there's only 4, and he worked a holiday. So the pay goes up and down. It's not always the same. And that's difficult for Social Security. They don't want to plug that in. But based on the rules, if we submit the pay stubs every month, then Jereth, it's not Jereth's problem if they make an overpayment. Because if they make an overpayment, that means that they didn't deal with it. They didn't deal with the information that we gave them in a timely manner. So if they, a year from now or 2 years from now, say, oh, Jereth had an overpayment in 2023 for $1,000. We paid him too much. And we'll say, Jereth already spent that money, and it would be a hardship for him to pay that back. And Jereth has given you all that information every month. So you have that information. The fact that you didn't put that in the computer is not Jereth's responsibility. That would be your responsibility. And we have been successful when we appeal those so that Jereth does not have that money taken back. So that's the reason why we encourage you and or your money manager to submit those pay stubs every month. It's also important to let Social Security Administration know when you have a job coach, okay? Because that way they sort of understand if Jereth has a job coach or somebody that coaches him related to work, they understand, oh, he has a disability. And it's more of a sort of a supported work program. And it's important for them to know that. And it also lets them know that Jereth continues to need support at work, even though he's very independent and has been working there a long time, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, the support can include on-the-job support or getting ready and prepared to work, which is more like what you get. Or it could be arranging and learning transportation to and from work, support with work-related meetings, things like that. All
What
right.
is a money manager? Well, a money manager is somebody that takes care of your money that you have a good relationship with.
Okay. And yeah, so we put that in there. So whoops. So you can read more about the money manager. We did talk a little bit about it. So Jereth has a money manager, but he also has some additional support with his work money, which the money manager doesn't touch, right?
Yeah.
Because you still want control of that.
Yeah.
So what did you work out?
You get a Bluebird card.
And what is a Bluebird card?
It's an American Express card.
So
So it's like a debit card.
right. So all of your work money goes
Yeah, you put the money
into the Bluebird account.
Yeah.
And then you found a person that you trust.
Mhm.
That's a support person. And what do you do when you want money on your card?
I usually ask them to put money on my card.
Okay. And they sort of help you. You work together so you can budget it out based on how many days of the week you worked and things like that. And sort of you have a certain amount per month that you can work with for your Lego sets and fun things, right?
Yep.
Okay. And I think another deal, I think you can afford on days that you work, yeah, you go out to eat, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you know you got income that day. So he's worked out some things with this person so that it's reasonable, and Jereth has a good understanding of how much money he's got, what he needs. They hash some things out once in a while, but gosh, you guys have been doing this now for what, 6, 7 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a while, and it's really worked out well. So The Bluebird card is just one option, but that because it can be refillable, so you can just transfer money immediately onto the card, and that also prevents. I know you were in an uncomfortable situation about 10 years ago or so where people would say, how much money you got? Can you help me out? And you would sort of feel compelled to give them money.
Yeah.
And now that can't happen, right?
Nope.
You say, I've talked to my, I'll use my Bluebird card. So
Yeah.
that way you don't have to worry about being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
All right. And I've got, guess to finish up, if you work, some myths about working. If I lose my SSI or SSDI benefits, if I work, the reality is while your SSI, your supplemental security income will reduce the more you make, you'll actually lose 50 cents for every dollar that you earn over $85 a month, but you'll always make more money with your combined paycheck and the SSI you're eligible to keep. If you work, will you lose your Medi-Cal or Medicare benefits? There are safeguards built into both SSI and SSDI to help preserve your health insurance. You're able to continue your Medi-Cal insurance even if you earn too much to receive SSI, as long as you use that Medi-Cal at least once a year. So if you don't use it at all, then you run the risk of using it, but make sure you use it at least once a year. And then there's also for SSDI an extended period of Medicare coverage as well. But there are some laws in place. You will not lose your medical benefits. If I lose my job, will I ever get my full SSI or SSDI benefits back? Yes, even if you're successful at working and eliminating your Social Security cash benefits, it doesn't mean you can't get them back if needed. So I've got more information on that if you need it there. And then Jereth and several of the people that we support helped us out on an employment grant with the state. We put together some employment videos and they're available for people to watch. They're about 90 minutes and there's different topics. If you want to know more about maintaining your Social Security benefits while working, that's one of them. Another one is on job development. Another one is on job assessment. So there's, I think, really practical, easy webinars, easy to understand. We have them translated already into Spanish, Armenian, and Farsi. You just choose your language, and you can just go to our website and click on the button for employment videos, and you can access them. There is a little survey you have to take because the state requires that they want information from people that view them. But they're available for free to watch anytime you want, either you, your sons, your daughters, or agencies. And we've tried to make them real practical. So if you like what we talked about today, you might enjoy those. And Vicki, if we got any questions?
We got one question. Someone was asking about the SSI, and does SSI have the same requirement for young adults to not be claimed as a dependent on taxes? I guess in order to qualify for SSI.
No, you can see the amount that they get per month may change, but you can the person's still eligible for SSI. There's different, it depends on your category of placement, how much your monthly SSI amount will be. So if you still live at home with a family, it'll be a little bit lower amount than if they were to live in their own apartment or whatever, okay? It'll increase to the max amount once they live in their own place. When they're still living with family, it's a little bit lower. If you still include them as a dependent, it'll still be lower, but they'll get some. So we still encourage you to apply. And one of the other things on SSI, when you speak with Social Security Administration every year or two when they do an eval, I'll let them know that they do use their SSI and have them pay a portion of the mortgage or a portion of the utilities or the rent.
Yes.
And even if you feel guilty about that, save it up in a separate account somewhere for the move out money that you know you're going to have. Okay. So save it in a separate account. You can't keep it in the same account because there are restrictions of how much money can be in that person's account. When it's over $2,000, then they start to assume, oh, he or she has assets, which means
Yeah.
maybe they don't need SSI anymore, and they'll
Or
stop
they're-
paying checks.
Or they're not spending it. So
Right.
they must
So they
not
must not need
need
it.
it.
And also they'll ask questions like, do you ever give them, gifts like jackets? And you'll say, oh yeah, I gave them a jacket at Christmas. Oh, how much was that? We'll count that as a gift and deduct that. And it's like, so we're not encouraging you to lie, but we're encouraging you to say, my son or daughter pays for all their stuff. Even though you sound like a heartless parent.
Yeah.
Because they'll want to include it as a gift, even though it's like, oh, I don't think it's any of their business what people get for Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever.
That's right. Okay, well, just any other questions or comments for Jereth and Scott? I think this has been really helpful. I always like to hear about all the great work that you do in the community, Jereth, and all the jobs you've had and how you use your own money to fund all your activities and things that you like to do. That's great. That's what we should all be doing. So this has been really helpful. As I said, we will send out the documents that Scott mentioned by email probably tomorrow. And we will put this training up on our YouTube channel so that you can watch it later, or you can share it with someone you know who might be interested. And we just want to thank both of you for being here and for sharing your experience with us. So
Well, thanks
thank you.
for having us.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jereth. I hope to see you again at Kohl's sometime
Yeah.
soon. Next time I return something.
All right.